Alrighty. Who out there in Streamland can hear me? Say hey in the chat if you can hear me.
Hey in chat.
I can hear you.
Not you.
Hey in chat.
Silly gooses.
Chat. Are you there, chat?
Did I do it right?
Someone says hoy.
Hoy, hoy, hoy. All right. So yeah, we're going to get started a few minutes early tonight because we have got quite a bit to get through. So welcome, one and all, to Sentinels Live episode 100. Woo! Woo! Tonight we've got not only a regular old Sentinels Live episode, we also have the Vengeance listening and viewing party, a couple of surprises, even some giveaways, and it should be a pretty good time. So tell your friends if they're not here yet, they should be. I personally can't believe that we've now been doing this for 2 years. The game has been out for a little bit more than 2 years, but we've actually been live streaming for 2 years now. It's almost exactly 2 years because I think we missed a week or two in there. So, yeah, it's crazy to think about. We've sold nearly 150,000 copies of Sentinels of the Multiverse, the video game. More than 170,000 expansions, and that's before we even count Season 2. So you guys have been really terrific. But this, actually, Vengeance itself is a whole nother milestone for us, which is that it's the first time we've ever done a Kickstarter. It's the first time we've had a successfully funded Kickstarter. And then once we ship Vengeance, which is coming soon, TM, it'll be our first shipped Kickstarter. And so we are, of course, very excited. And to help us celebrate that are a couple of gentlemen for whom they passed those milestones quite a bit ago. From Greater Than Games, we've got Christopher Badell and Adam Rebottaro coming up on your screen now.
Greetings.
There
They are each 100 years old.
Exactly.
That's true.
Today.
That is very true.
I feel 100 years old.
I am a year, and I'm a year older than Adam minus 2 days.
Yeah.
So I am a year older than 100 minus 2 days.
Right on. All right. So the giveaways, you can see on the video, you got me. Hi, everybody. John's there. Jean-Marc is there. We got Jennifer and Krista as well. They can turn on the video if they want, but they don't have to if they don't want to. I may turn mine off just to save bandwidth. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a couple giveaways tonight. And what we're going to be giving away is, you guys might have noticed that we're doing a bit of a sale promotion on our site right now called the Holiday Stocking Stuffer, which gives away Steam, which allows you to print out and give away Steam keys. We're going to be giving out 2 of the $50 holiday bundle, which is the game, the Season 1, Season 2, and the foil pack. We're going to be giving away 2 of those bundles throughout the course of the evening, and Christopher and Adam get to decide how we give out the first one. So they're going to think about that while they're here for the next 15 to 20 minutes asking.
I think
questions.
what you should do is get people to type their names into the chat and furiously enter them into a spreadsheet.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's going so well in the past.
And the last name before Christopher passes out is the one who gets the All right, so if you have any questions about the multiverse, about the history of our company, their company, Oblivion, maybe, new environments, shout them out. Make sure you mention Handelabra so that I can read them out. And, yeah. So what's going on, guys? How's the holiday season over at Greater Than Games?
Good.
Busy.
Stressful. Yeah.
We're doing a million things right now, but that's not new. But still, yeah, a lot of exciting things going on right now.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, we just announced that there's new environments coming out with Oblivion. Mm-hmm. So that is awesome. And also, yeah, it's good stuff that we are getting to go through. A big project we've been working on right now is something that's connected with a lot of the lore that we've been working on. And that was one of the reasons we were like, okay, we really need to do these extra environments so we can get all that extra story out.
Yep.
Yeah, so tell us again what the 3 environments are, and I'm sure most of the people have seen it because almost everyone who comes here is both a backer of the board game and the video game. But why don't you tell us what those are while people are...
No, Jeremy, I'm going to quiz you.
Let's see. I know... One of them's a movie studio.
Okay, what's the name of the movie studio?
A movie studio.
Cool, a movie studio. I'm going to throw it to John. John, do you know what the name of the movie studio is?
Champion Studios.
There we go. Good job. And then, Jeremy, there's a city.
It's where Baron Blade is from.
Yeah.
Mordova? No, I'm butchering.
Oh, you were real close.
Really close? Mordova?
Yeah, halfway through there.
John?
Mulva?
Dolores!
Anybody? Anyone? Adam?
I know what it is.
Okay. Or do you? Are you just faking it?
And I know that the third one is where Tempest's folks settled on Earth.
That's true. And what is the name of Tempest's race?
The guys that are enslaved by Therathians.
That doesn't narrow it down.
That doesn't narrow it down. And also, you're defining them by who their oppressors are? That's rough, man.
It is. It's terrible. I'm a horrible person.
John?
Meridians.
The Meridian!
There we go.
The chat knows.
Yeah, the chat's like, guys, Morigrad,
Yeah.
Meridians.
All right,
It's
so
really-
we're going to dive into some of these questions here. So I'm going to start with Chaomancer7. Recently saw a connection between the Prime Wardens and emotions. Hockey equals joy, Tempest equals loss. Which one rather loss? That is a long question. Okay, so if this was intentional, how close is that assessment, and do other teams have meta theme in the comics?
That wasn't necessarily intentional so much as it is that those characters like all had their own directions they were going. We never sat down and said we're going to make ourselves like Power Rangers but for emotions. But at the same time, like that's feels like it's good just like storytelling.
I think that it's more just based on we team them up because their personalities were good complements for each other.
Yeah.
And just where they fit in the team seem to piece together well.
Yeah.
The 6th Prime Warden is hurt.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it has a monkey.
Yeah.
Nice. For the new hero decks, which one was the most difficult to design? I'm assuming that means mechanically, because, but maybe it
I think
means
mechanically the art might be the same though.
You want to say benchmark?
Yeah.
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 Benchmark.
Benchmark mechanically and benchmark for art as well.
If one more villain could have been made into a hero deck for Oblivion, who would it be? And I think I actually know that the meta answer to this is we never had any plans for another villain to be a hero, so there isn't one. But maybe there's
That
something
is
else.
the meta answer. But if it were going to be one more,
Pick one. We toyed around with Cargo War thing,
yeah, but like
but we didn't think that.
Kismet.
Yeah.
You could do a Kismet hero. I'm not like super jazzed about it, but it's a thing that I could do. Like, yeah,
We made the ones that we were excited about.
right. And the ones that like we had planned on and all this stuff. So,
Right.
so like Jeremy's answer is correct. But if I were like, okay, but I'm going to answer the damn question, then Kismet.
I've been working with you for a while, so I tend to know kind of a little bit about how those meta answers are going to work. Are we ever going to see the new Young Ra in the card game or video game?
No, because that the Sentinels, the Multiverse timeline doesn't ever include that Ra. That's from a different timeline.
Right.
All right. I know everyone's busy with Oblivion, but is there any new info on the Sentinels RPG? There's probably lots of it, but you can't tell us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Character creation is super cool. We've been narrowing down on that recently. We had a meeting today about logos. Logos are looking good. We're making some pencils for Gen Con. Those are awesome.
We threw out all of the Sentinels lore for it, and
Yeah.
it is instead a distant future cyberpunk adventure.
Yeah, with hippos.
Yeah, as the main character.
Everyone
plays
is
a
hippo. Yeah.
And,
Not the hippo, the villainous guy,
Yeah,
but like just actual hippopotamus.
cyberpunk dystopia.
Does Katy
Lots of
Perry
good-
ever play a benefit concert for the Myarians?
Did who?
Did Katy Perry ever play?
Oh man, no, but they would love that. Well, some of them would. They're not all into her.
Right, they have different tastes.
Right. The Tempest would love that.
Yeah, Tempest would be a thing.
Why do some heroes like Legacy not have mini nemesis in Vengeance and Villains?
Because they have mega nemesis and vengeance.
All right.
Legacy has enough. So yeah, some of them. I mean, for story reasons is
Right.
the cop out answer, but also like that's like the way things put together. It's not just the cop out answer; that's the real answer.
Right.
All right. Is Night Mist able to fight in the Oblivion conflict, or is she unable to after becoming the Gate?
So she
define fight.
right. She's like she's able to reach out and have some activity in there. She's not just the Gate,
Yeah.
but like all of her energy is expended by the end of that
Right.
conflict. Good question.
Is Benchmark connected to an existing character in the way the rest of the heroes are?
He's connected to Revacorp, and therefore he's
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah,
He's
the
connected
other
to heroes
characters.
and also other villains and
Yeah.
things like Revenant. So
So jumping
So-
off a little bit, is there a release window for Sentinel Tactics Prime War? First mentioned
Not at
at
this
Gen
point.
Con this year.
yeah, no, we don't have a specific release window. I can tell you what our goal is, but there's no point in that because
Yeah.
until we've like got more focus on it, I don't want to tell you like August of 2017, but like
Right. I can say that we want to start working on it and will
Well, I
as
mean,
soon as
yeah.
we're able to. Yeah.
So I think everybody else heard it. That's Prime War confirmed for August of 2017. All right,
That's-
so
um,
yeah, and Jeremy's making it. moving on.
All right.
Really
Does
nice.
Christopher?
Because he just said that the Prime War video game is coming out in
Oh,
August 2017.
right,
Yeah, the board game is actually going to be an adaptation of the video game.
Yep.
We're going the
Deal.
other way this time.
I have a question. Is the hippo involved in Sentinels of the Hippoverse that you mentioned earlier?
No, actually, strangely,
Yeah,
no.
completely unrelated.
Yeah.
Does Christopher ever wear something different than ties and vests?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wore yesterday. I wore the green button-up like army shirt.
Yeah, he wears different stuff. Sometimes he just wears T-shirts.
Nah, that's super rare though.
But sometimes you do.
Like
Usually when you're doing
like
trucks.
if I'm unloading a
something
truck,
like that.
or
Yeah,
like going
I was
rock-
going to say, I've seen Christopher in a t-shirt and orange pants setting up like a PAX show or a Gen Con.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, doing booth setup.
Right.
But yeah, t-shirts for me. T-shirts are only for like physical activity
Yeah,
times.
I'm sure you don't wear that when you're working on your bathroom
Oh yeah, I do.
painting. Oh, you do?
And I sleep in this.
Oh,
I shower in
That's
this.
awful.
How do you think you clean these things?
All right, question. Does the Luminary have a... Wait, hang on. Okay. Does the Luminary have a destroy any amount of devices card one-shot like Construct Cataclysm?
That seems really likely.
we'll have to see.
No one knows.
All right,
No one
Ava
knows.
Jarvis asks, will Sentinel Tactics be resurrected? See Prime War. Do some searching about that. That's sort of the situation there.
Yeah. Sentinel Tactics definitely has a future, and there are more things that we want to do with it.
Will there be a Kickstarter for Sentinels RPG?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Fall August of 2017. Actually.
August 2017.
Yeah. Yeah.
Confirmed.
Confirmed.
Tempest is listed as being an ambassador in his bio before Voss. Who was he an ambassador to?
He was an ambassador on the Meridian planet, and like was because they're not just all one people. He also
It's not like Star Wars where a planet is a
is a
city.
city, right? And he had also done some things with some other alien races, and he hasn't really been doing much in his ambassadorial role during the Sentinels, the Multiverse timeline.
But
But
that will change.
yeah, that definitely changes moving forward for him.
All right. You said during the Oblivion Kickstarter that you love fans creating their own decks. Are there any decks
Yes.
you would love to see fans create?
So I love fans creating their own decks. I've never seen a fan-created deck. And then I've seen people make them, but I've never
Right.
looked through any really stuff like that. Like that is a thing that I stay far away from. So yeah, I want to see you make the deck that you're super excited about. I want to see you make the deck that you're into, because that's how we started making
Right.
games, is
Yeah.
making content for games that we were into. I don't ever need to see it, but I want to hear that you're doing it, because that's awesome.
I think I'm more inclined to look at them now that we're basically done. Though, also.
Honestly, I'm going to look at a bunch of them, but not,
To see,
not
like-
before next year.
Yeah, and actually, I'll expound on that a little bit, like, because you guys have said this to me before. Some of it is a legal question. Like, you don't want to look at something, have to question yourself, like, was I inspired by my own thing? Was I inspired by this other thing? And then, and that's why they're not allowed to post stuff like that to your own forums, because otherwise it might get a little bit messy and stuff like that, right?
Right. Well, beyond that, like, we even don't want to, since we have this really, like, we don't look at that stuff policy. There's been a couple of decks that I've made that somebody has come through and said, oh, well, that's really similar to this one deck that was made on the BGG forum a year ago. It's like, cool, that's fun. I literally never saw it. And if I saw any hint of it, I looked away.
Yeah.
So there's no way that there's like a conflict of Christopher stole that. So
How is the letters page coming along?
thank you. That is a great question. Who asked that question?
That was asked by Cytosine.
Great. Well, 10 bonus points, which is a real thing. The letters page is a thing that we are actively working on. We have, for the last couple of weeks, recorded an episode a week, just have a little bit of a backlog of episodes that we're going to put out a little bit later. Our intention is to, once the podcast goes live early next year, we're going to be recording episodes within a week of when they release. And then we'll have a bit of a backlog so that when we're at a convention, or if we're just slammed with a million work things, or if something catches on fire, like
Right,
whatever.
then we could just slap one out.
Right, but we want to have a backlog of like a good half dozen plus episodes before we go live with anything, so that but we want to be able to do them live, that we were able to react and respond to
Right.
when people are
I
saying
think
stuff.
we want to be our target to go live with it is shortly after the first of the year.
Yep.
And a lot of that depends on hosting and website, and
That is out of our hands.
we don't work on that part of it. We just talk.
We've got people that are working on the hosting and on the website stuff, and pretty much as soon as that stuff is ready, I would be surprised if it launched in the first week of January.
Okay. Yeah, I think the air conditioning kicked on here, and I don't know if that interrupted the internet for a second. I'm waiting for
Whoops.
the stream to come back up.
Oh,
You have an internet connection that goes through like Wind.
I all of like everything got all weird, and then I saw the thing happen. So let's see here. It
They're
says that I'm
posting
live.
pictures of fire.
We're gonna.
Okay, it looks like we are back live again.
Oh,
I'm
great.
gonna take the positive half of this question from DW Setback. Which Sentinel promos are you happiest with?
Which of the whole game, or
Which
of
promos?
the Sentinels?
Which promos
The Adamant Sentinels of the Sentinels.
Oh, I don't
out of all the Sentinels, like not just the Sentinels, but out of all the heroes?
The promos. Oh yeah, okay. So
They
that's the last
said
thing.
that they didn't hear the rest of the stuff about the letters page. The main thing we said about the letters page is that it should be going live sometime in January, provided all that stuff works, and that we're really excited to share all the crazy lore stuff.
Are we live again, or
Are we? I'm going to assume that we're
wasting
live
time?
because people are.
I'm seeing it on the Twitch page, so I believe we are live again. Yes.
All right, cool. We're going to pretend we're live.
All right.
Okay, so that was about the letters page. Then we've got. Let's see. Let me just jump in. And when was the last time? No. What's the reason for Harpy changing her name to Pinion?
So the Sentinel Tactics timeline happens significantly later than the Sentinels, the Sentinel Comics RPG. The Sentinel Comics RPG story picks up right after the end of Oblivion, whereas Sentinel Tactics happens 5 to 10 years later, and in the course of several years, she changed her name.
Well, all right.
One letter at a time until she got
Right,
there.
right.
One letter a year.
After a while, it was like Harian, and she's like, "This is a weird name, but I'm going with it. It's a thing."
I've noticed a tendency of yours to refer to the heroes by their names instead. Is that for clarity reasons, to make a point to recognize the people behind the title, or have I just been reading into the wrong things?
That's interesting. I don't know if that's anything that we do intentionally. We're kind of they're all our babies, and we're all friends. We're friends with all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't see either of us doing that often. We usually use their superhero names when we're talking about them.
Yeah, but I know we both do it as well. So like, that's definitely found it in things. I think it's just mostly that we kind of like.
I feel like we only ever really do it to clarify if there's multiple people who have the same hero name. Then we
also do it when we're talking about relations between various heroes. We're like, oh well, the way that these two characters get along, we'll frequently use their names. So I think it mostly has to do with the fact that like these characters are parts of our lives, and so it just happens.
All right, Real Fan of Fanatic says, I just want to thank the Greater Games team for making Parse. It is heartwarming to see such a heartwarming example of a realistic yet sympathetic autistic person in a game. As for a question, what made Tony Torres turn into the Heartbreaker? Always wanted to beat him up after seeing Dark Watch Mr. Fixer's defeat art.
Yeah, he went through a lot of stuff.
Yeah, long descent there.
Yeah, that is a thing that we will certainly cover at some point in the letters page. But the thing that a lot of things happened. Part of it being, a cop in Rook City is rough, or being a detective in Rook City.
Right.
A big thing that distanced himself from his humanity, which is what had to happen for that, was being trapped for a long time in the Colosseum, in the Bloodsworn Colosseum, because that kind of came down on top of him, and he was there for a while. He just kind of had to let go of a bunch of things to survive. So yeah, a lot of stuff. There wasn't just a single thing, but a lot of the sort of things that you see happen to Tony Torres over the course of the game kind of went through to there.
Yeah.
This was actually
there's kind of a review answer.
So we got one that's, I believe, directed at us. Are we getting a computer version of Sentinel Tactics? So see again, Prime War. That is definitely a thing. We've always wanted to do a computerized version or a digital version of Sentinel Tactics, but Sentinel Tactics itself is a little bit in flux right now. And so, stay tuned is the best I can tell you on that. It's something we would very much like to do at some point, but we want to see what it's going to be because it's not even its final form yet. So we're going to do that. All right. What is the official?
When the time's right.
What's that?
I was saying, sort of when the time is right, sort of when the game is well cooked.
Exactly.
And Christopher just posted in the chat the link to the form for sending in questions for the letters page.
Yeah, we're getting lots of letters,
cool.
lots of questions here that are really good, like letters page questions. Great. If you've got questions for us that are like in-depth lore questions, you want to know about the story of these characters, stuff like that, definitely dig in and
Stick them on there.
because we've gotten through a few of them already, and we've got a bunch more, but we always want more questions.
Yeah. And in case it got cut off, or you're just joining us here, we will be starting to release those pretty soon after the first of the year.
Yeah. Jeremy, I think we've got time for like one or two more questions if there's major ones, and then you said you wanted to do us to do a giveaway thing.
Yeah, if you guys can come up with a way, I don't know if you want to ask a trivia question or if you want to just pick someone at random or what, but figure it out. Talk amongst yourselves while I figure out what the last question is going to be. All right, good. So I know what the last question is going to be, so we'll just wait for them to come up with how they're going to do their thing.
They're so out of focus. Oh, and now they're in focus.
Yeah, they keep bouncing in and out.
It's a good trick.
Where are they? The camera doesn't know.
All right, we have a trivia question.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask you guys the last question for you to answer, and then you can put forth your trivia question. So the question is, what is your favorite music from the video game so far, and which hero are you the most eager to hear? Hero.
To hear?
Oh, I think for Hero, there's a part of me that wants to say Argent Adept because like that's going to be some work, but Jean-Marc's like, yeah.
I really love Baron Blade's music.
Oh, all right.
Like I love it. It's just such a I don't know, the sort of
Yeah. I think that my favorite piece of music in the soundtrack is the main theme. Like I love all the songs and they're all super cool.
Yeah.
And I love the way that the Vengeance ones fit together and like everything. Jean-Marc is so good at music. Like he is amazing and I love all the stuff he's made. I want him to make more and more and more of it. But when it comes down to it, that main theme is my cell phone ringer. It's the music. It's on my alarm clock, so every morning it wakes me up in the morning. Like
the chiptune version of that is just the best.
It is
my favorite. It's my favorite thing in the world.
I have talked to various musicians that I know to try to convince them to do covers of it with different instruments. I've got a guy that plays the hurdy-gurdy that I'm trying to convince to do a Sentinels thing. Like I just made that up. That's not really.
No, you can't just make up instruments.
What is about the blossophone?
That's also made up.
The Vibronopter?
Okay,
that's real.
The Vibronopter.
That's a real one.
All right, so I think we have a trivia question, and the winner, the first person to answer this correctly in the chat, will be getting one copy of the holiday bundle of the digital game. It includes the core game, Season 1, Season 2, and a hero foil pack. All right, shoot.
All right, cool. So the trivia question is, name any two major inventions of Baron Blade's father.
Oh.
Any two of the major inventions.
Supervillain type inventions.
Right.
Yeah.
So like the automatic toaster, no, like obviously he made that, but it's not very supervillainous.
Right. It's mostly
unless it was like the toaster that secretly poisoned everyone 20 years later.
It didn't work very well. He invented it, but
all right, well, there's a lag, so we can answer another question or something.
I know the hurdy-gurdy's real.
Jean-Marc said that Baron Blade's father invented the hurdy-gurdy.
No, someone's scratching up there.
Oh, okay. The hurdy-gurdy's real.
Playing the hurdy-gurdy was pretty cool.
All right, so I'm going to count on you guys to be watching the chat, because I don't know the answer to this question.
Oh, okay.
Shrinking ray robots. The hurdy-gurdy, of course.
Is that two things or one thing?
Yeah. Genagro, if you can specify what it is that
what's
you're...
going on there, yeah.
Ah, there we go. That's the Tobias Stauff. Nailed it with Shrinking Ray, Walking Tank.
Yep.
Baron Blade. Oh, that's a really good one. Yeah. So I'm looking at a bunch of people here that went to the bio because they're giving us the 2 from the bio. The third one we would have accepted is War Zeppelin. We were looking for 3 in particular, but we said let's do any 2: Shrinking Ray, Walking Tank,
And War Zeppelin.
War Zeppelins.
All right, so that's Tobias Stoff. Krista, are you with us, Krista? I believe you are. It looks like you are.
But I will say,
Yes.
Okay, get
Best
the
answer.
info. Get Tobias Stoff's info so you can send him the pack, the holiday bundle pack. Congratulations,
All right.
Tobias Stoff.
and I will say, first correct answer to buy stop. Best answer to Knight of the Frozen Lance with Baron Blade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knight of the Frozen Lance was one of our people that's actually been hanging out in the chat for like 4 hours before the stream even started. So
Wow.
bonus.
So you're ready on
He's
that.
sitting there, he's like, Baron Blade, Baron Blade.
He's like, I gotta be in the first in line for this stream. I gotta get really good seats.
Yeah, Spencer says, String Cray, and obviously I'm too slow. It's been great being here for part of this. I'm sorry that we have to run off, but we've got stuff to do.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us. That was great. We got a lot of questions. Remember, there's a link in the chat to go to submit questions for the letters page. You got lore questions about the multiverse or the Sentinels or anything in Sentinel Comics, that's where you send it. And they're starting up a podcast beginning of next year. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. And we're going to move on to the next phase of the evening, which is our listening party. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Insert
Smoke
transition
bombs.
here.
All right, good. So, all right. So Christopher and Adam have left. We've got still with us. I've also turned off the video because we're not going to use that for this part of the evening. We've got myself, John, Jean-Marc, Krista, and Jen. The whole Handelabra team is with you right now. So, we've got some music to listen to. We are still going to be giving away one more copy of the bundle throughout the course of the evening, so stick around if you want to be in the running for that. And as is my wont, I will turn it over to Jean-Marc. What are we going to be listening to tonight?
All right. So, as most of you know, Vengeance contains 2 new environments and 5 new villains, but the villains are not in the same format that they have been traditionally. They're so terrifying that they make Jeremy leave. Oh, now he's
The
back.
video's
Okay.
not on anymore, so you don't have to worry about
Yeah, but it's on for us.
it. Oh, yeah, we can turn it off.
Okay, just a sec. Turning video off.
All right, that'll make it easier for us anyway.
Okay. Yeah, Jeremy left, and I didn't know what happened. So anyway, so what was he saying? Something about villains. So
They're not the
there
usual
are 5
villains.
new villains, but they are not the traditional solo villains. Instead, they are teaming up together. So you've been playing as a team of heroes this whole time, and Baron Blade took a cue from that idea and said, well, if I team up with other villains, maybe we stand a chance. So he did so and assembled the Vengeful 5, and we will be hearing themes from those villains as well. So let's open it up first with Baron Blade. So you've heard. All right, so having repeatedly suffered at the hands of our heroes, Baron Blade went into hiding. After spending countless hours on new experiments, he gathered a team of villains from across the multiverse to help him stand against the Freedom Five and their allies. And so in this theme, you'll probably notice it sounds somewhat familiar. And that's because it's about the same guy. He's still Baron Blade, but he has changed in many ways. And has sort of re-evaluated his theme, and that has changed over the years. So even though the style is very much still the same, you'll notice that the melody part has changed quite a bit. So yeah, I guess that's as much as there is to say about him.
Yes, and I have
since
to
we already know a lot about him. So,
and I will apologize. We didn't rehearse this beforehand, so he was going to say all that before playing the theme, and I hit the button too early. So, so that was actually supposed to be the intro to Baron Blade, and now we're done with Baron Blade. So, what's the next thing we're going to listen to, Jean-Marc?
All right. So, as many of you know from playing any game against Baron Blade, he opens up the game with a mobile defense platform. And in solo mode, that keeps him immune to damage until the mobile defense platform itself has been destroyed. And but in Vengeance, the mobile defense platform is actually an environment that the heroes and villains can fight in. So Baron Blade's signature mega gadgets are his mobile defense platforms, capable of transforming himself and anything else he needs across vast distances, while keeping him protected. Each one is run by a crew of Blade battalions. Now, having teamed up with other villains, he grants them the use of his platforms, and as a result, these platforms are a draw for the heroes to confront their foes all in one place. So let's give a listen to the inside of Baron Blade's lair mobile defense platform.
Now?
Now.
Okay. All right, so that was the mobile defense platform. So tell us a little bit about your process coming up with the music for that one, jean-marc.
Sure. Well, this one was interesting because if any of you were here for the Shattered Timelines listening party, which, by the way, was our first one, I did the Time Cataclysm for that one, and there was one environment that was in the Time Cataclysm that I hadn't done any environment music for yet, and that was Mobile Defense Platform, the main computer room. And so basically I had to come up with, well, what will be in it, even though I don't really know what that piece of music is going to sound like at this point yet. And so, I mean, the most obvious thing for me and from Greater Than Games was that it had to feel like Baron Blade lived there, or at least spent a lot of time there. So obviously, like a reference to his theme was in order, and so I kind of stretched out the theme with horns that sort of like more undertone and less like main themey. And I mixed that together with Final Wasteland, Realm of Discord, and The Block. And so when I started with this one, I already had those pieces, and I wanted to use those pieces verbatim because, that's how all the pieces of Time Cataclysm worked, was they took something and had them verbatim. Maybe I made some adjustments so that they fit the timing or the harmony at that particular point, but I tried to mix it together kind of as close as possible to what it was specifically, to get some very interesting sounds out of that. So that was sort of my the baseline for it. And then, of course, it needed to sound kind of techy and sciencey and sci-fi and mad scientist-y. And so I just started kind of messing around with different sounds and stuff like that, and kind of layering them on top of each other and looping them different ways. And then found like, okay, how could I mix those with those horns that I had, and went about things that way. And then as I got kind of a foundational thing started, it's like, okay, so we've kind of established this is this so far as a remix of Baron Blade's theme, but it's supposed to be an environment. It's not just supposed to be a remix. So once that point was reached, then it was time for some a new theme, kind of in a similar vein, but something that we haven't heard before. And that's where it kind of alternates between the string themes and the horns doing sort of blaring. And I deliberately used some really kind of awkward or harsh effects on it, like the flutter and stuff like that, because it gives it a much a much edgier tone than those horns usually have. That one actually came together really quickly compared to other environment songs. I kind of felt like once everything was established as to how it was going to sound, it just kind of moved forward really quickly, and I kind of heard what the next thing would sound like. Then eventually it was about 6 minutes, and it's like, oh, well, I guess it's time to wrap up. So,
right on. Yeah. So there's a question in the chat that the environments actually look like real 3D renderings, and that is in fact what they are. Jennifer creates them in 3D, and then we capture them to put them in the game. So, Jennifer, why don't you tell us a little bit about the challenges to making this environment?
So, this environment, I had a lot of it was had to kind of imagine what it'll look like. We knew it well, it's going to be Baron Blade's ship. So, that's why the walls are purple. And I just realized,
yes.
sorry, I I touched something weird on my computer and made it go full screen, and I was like, "What's going on?" And half of it was inside, half of it was outside, and then I was like, well, there needs to be a dome, so we recognize it as a mobile defense platform. But then, like in the artwork and in the comic book, you see it without the dome over it, with all the buildings. So it was a neat environment to build.
I think that's always a challenge
different
for you, because obviously the cards have a lot of great artwork on them, but I wouldn't necessarily call them comprehensive. And so if you need to say, all right, well, what is everything that happens in this given environment, that is not necessarily drawn yet.
Yeah. So and like some of the card art was very descriptive. Like if the bridge, I tried to make it look a lot like the card art, but like the big views of the hangar, that's something different completely. So
right on. All right, cool. So that was our first environment, which means it's probably time to do another villain. So who are we listening to next, Jean-Marc?
Okay, so next up we've got Ermine. Growing up with Maya Montgomery, aka the Wraith, Cassandra Lilia was always the more social of the two. But whereas Maya merely used her interactions as a cover, to Cassandra, popularity with her peers was top priority, or at least so Maya thought. In reality, Cassandra also used her social activities as a cover for her nighttime activities of leaping across rooftops and breaking into vaults. This all was going fine until Maya caught her red-handed and exposed her identity publicly. Now known as Ermine, she misses the social interactions she once enjoyed and curses the Wraith with every waking breath. So naturally, when she received a handwritten letter from Baron Blade asking her to join, let's listen to Ermine's theme now.
All right, so that was Ermine, and as people are pointing out in the chat, very slick and jazzy. What were your inspirations for Ermine?
Well, really, it was. Both Maya and Cassandra grew up in Rook City, and of course, Rook City starts with that sort of sensual saxophone. Which is then corrupted by everything else. But I kind of started with that as the base, but instead of doing instead of just making it pure Rook City style, I used it for a very swingy, jazzy kind of at the club kind of thing where she's more using her stealth abilities and things like that to but in a social situation, so becoming very friendly with somebody and then taking their wallet or something like that. Even though it has this sort of sexy edge to it, it still has that kind of like minor quality to it as well. If that makes sense.
Indeed.
All right. So yeah, and then next up we have Friction.
Friction.
All right. So Crystal Lee was overjoyed to become an intern of the famous Meredith Stinson, also known as Tachyon. However, Lee was not an ideal understudy. She was hot-headed, messy, and her ideas weren't fruitful. Projecting her frustrations onto Dr. Stinson, she stole an experimental speed suit from her lab. Knowing the Freedom Five's constant threat as Baron Blade, she joined the newly formed team to show Tachyon just who the best speedster really is. So let's listen to Friction's theme now.
Yes, I see that some people, some eagle-eyed, or I guess eagle-eared, maybe blue whale-eared, I don't know, people in the chat are noticing that she's stealing from Tachyon for sure.
Yeah, totally intentional. You know, anyone who's like, wait a minute, this is like Tachyon's theme, is like, I was completely intentional because, you know, that's what she does lore-wise, and so to me it made sense that she would also steal a lot of Tachyon's musical cues. But of course, they're twisted and stuff. They don't have that nice, clean sound to them that the Tachyon does, and a lot of awkward intervals and stuff like that in there. So, all right.
Yeah, I love the fact that like one of her mechanics in the game is that she puts her suit out essentially, and that keeps her from hurting herself with the lightning, and then once you can get her suit sort of damaged, essentially, she starts hurting herself by using her powers. I really love that from a thematic point of view. Like, it is exactly the right thing for her, you know, being that's like, she wishes she was like Tachyon, but she can only do it with technology, and her technology breaks down. I think that's just so great.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I find that she's one of the villains who is most similar to
her nemesis,
their nemesis, without being the nemesis. So like, you know, it's not like Iron Legacy and Legacy, that like, I'm just talking about two different people who are opposed but the most similar, and so yeah, like that's why I was just like, okay, now it's time for like Tachyon's theme gone bad or something
haywire.
like that.
Yeah, totally.
All right. But speaking of Tachyon and the Freedom 5, it's time for our next environment piece. And that environment piece is for Freedom Tower. Freedom Tower is a skyscraper in the heart of Megalopolis. It stands as a symbol of protection, hope, and safety for the world. It overlooks the city in which it stands and distracts would-be attacks on the city. So just so you are all aware, this next piece has a really big dynamic range. It starts really quiet, but it gets as loud as the other pieces. So I wouldn't recommend turning up your speakers once it starts. It kind of fades in at the beginning. So let's listen to Freedom Tower now.
All right, so we are back. What do you guys think of the Freedom Tower? So Jean-Marc, obviously, I mean, the people in the chat kind of figured it out. This has got some definite megalopolis influences, but some other stuff. So where did the Freedom Tower come from?
Yeah, so I mean, the Freedom Tower is sort of like, you know, the pinnacle of, you know, heroic presence in the largest city in the Sentinels world. So obviously, having a megalopolis sort of feeling to it made sense, but of course it's of the Freedom 5 themselves. So having the Sentinels theme in there made a lot of sense, and so I was like, well, what if, you know, I kind of expressed the Sentinels theme, but used the Megalopolis style, and then added sort of an extra layer of like, this is it, this is the place, this is, you know, what you look to when you think everything's, you know, your whole city's gonna fall apart or something like that. You know, like the heroes don't just like sit there all the time, you know, they're busy training, they're out in the streets, they're up in the skies, they're fighting and stuff like that. And so, you know, that was sort of expressed in how the music changes a lot throughout the piece of music. And so every part of the Sentinels theme is represented, from the intro to the main part, to the bridge, and then that little part, even that dun, 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 that's even in there if you can catch it. So yeah, just putting those all together, and you know, in terms of composing it, you know, obviously it was a very orchestral style, and I took a lot of cues from other orchestral pieces of work, and probably most notably Super Mario Galaxy, which had a fantastic sort of soaring through the stars kind of soundtrack itself. And so I kind of took some inspiration from that and put it in there as well.
Yeah, I actually made a joke when we first were listening to this that it definitely had a certain Zelda feeling to me. Like the sort of like out on the main plane, Ocarina of Time, like galloping along on Epona kind of feel to it. Like it felt like every video game I've ever played, which in my mind made it a pretty amazing piece of music. So, so that's good stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, game music has had a big influence on me overall. So, you know, comparisons between different games and the music I compose is not incidental.
All right, so Jen, tell us a little bit about building the Freedom Tower.
This was actually a really exciting environment to build. So this one, like there was more in the card art that we wanted to show in the environment than we actually like had cameras to do that with, which that's not something that usually that's not, you know, that's kind of a rarity. So because, you know, you may notice with the Vengeance environments, there's 14 cameras for every environment, instead of 9. So yeah, so in this one there was a fair amount of sometimes if you listen to our other streams with the environment, sometimes we get pre-made models and adapt them to our environment. Sometimes there's a lot of custom work, and this environment had a fair amount of custom work. Because the modeling I did to make things look a specific way.
And I would say because I think that this environment too, not Christopher, Adam had a lot of really specific thoughts about this environment because obviously this is the sort of the seat of power. This is where the Freedom 5 lives and trains and plans, and so like specifically like Wraith's room, I know was one that he was like, no, those grenades need to be like 10% smaller, and the throwing knives have to be like 15% more angled this way. So he was really specific, and I think that that really. Like I said, this is the seat of power. This is their home, and I think this is the one that, like you said on the card art, had the most sort of fertile area to work with. I think he felt like it had the most really specific ideas about things he wanted to show from the team.
Yes, and a lot of these things, like the front desk, for example, like it's not just in the artwork from this environment. You see it in artwork for different heroes and villains too, and in the comic book. I drew some ideas from there too.
Right on. All right, so I think we have 2 more villains left. So who are we listening to next, Jean-Marc?
Yeah, so just a quick note. I noticed in the chat that people were kind of thinking that, at some point something would go wrong in the Freedom Tower because of like entry point and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I really felt like, especially given, all the other the villain themes and all the environments where all this chaos is happening. I really thought that having just like a solid one just to represent the Freedom Tower and the heroes in it and like what it represents to the city was more important than any particular incident that would occur there. So I kind of deliberately chose not to do that.
All right.
All right, so yeah, moving on to the last 2 pieces here. Next up, we have Fright Train. So, Stephen Graves and Tyler Vance, now known as Bunker, enlisted together in boot camp and were instant rivals, constantly competing with each other. After Graves suffered severe injury in their platoon, he was honorably discharged from duty, but had trouble finding work. He eventually ended up hired by a secret security force that chemically enhanced his body, making him 8'3" brute and outfitting him with a massive train-like helmet, giving him the name Fright Train. But after his original crew was captured and tossed into the block, he was recruited to join Baron Blade's vengeful team. Let's listen to Fright Train's theme now.
So here's the thing. I see that everybody's enjoying Fright Train as much as we did. And when the first time, when Jean-Marc was actually sort of specking out the concepts behind these, the very first, I hear Krista laughing, the very first version had the train whistle in in a position that made both of us, when we listened to it here in the office, laugh out loud. Because it was just, it felt so like we're listening to this crazy villain, and now Thomas the Tank Engine just came in. It has since been changed to the point that I think it fits, but that first time through, it was like, oh my goodness, what's happening? But yeah, this is really, a lot of the people in the chat echoed exactly my thoughts on it. Like, this is like, chugga, 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 watch out, here comes the Fright Train.
Yeah. I mean, and this is, this is the style that Greater Than Games want. They were just like, I was like, so Fright Train. They're like, just train noises, just everything that you think of when you think of trains. And I was like, all right. So, right at the beginning there, you hear this train kind of oncoming, and then like this like crash, and that's him busting through the wall. And that is actually more like the reference to Entry Point, where like he's on the card art there. And so so I just grabbed as many train noises as I could and found ways to make them work musically. And then I was like, oh, well, what's going to be like the accompaniment and the melody and stuff like that? And I was like, well, I guess acoustic guitar and banjo. And then, the lead instrument would be that harmonica, like, I can't actually play the harmonica, but, and clearly I can't mimic one either.
And I will say my favorite part of the music now that it's finished is definitely that like the train sort of coming at you like, oh boy, here we go. That's good stuff.
Yeah. That's Fright Train's theme. And finally we have Proletariat. Alexander Tsarev, I think that's it.
Tsarev
was an exemplary Russian soldier near the end of World War II. As part of a confidential experiment, Alexander found that whenever he took a blow, he would multiply. Eventually, he was able to control his duplication at will. However, doing so wore on his mind. When the threat of the Cold War became imminent, Alexander cryogenically froze himself. Upon being unfrozen by Baron Blade, who broke him free, he convinced him that the Freedom 5 needed to be stopped and was responsible for his woes. Now he fights along Baron Blade's side. Let's listen to Proletariat's theme now.
Hang on. Sorry, folks. I apologize. I screwed up the way I set this up. Hang on. I got to set it up again real quick. I forgot to turn off the biggie.
By now, I meant later.
Yeah, no, 2 seconds. 2 seconds and we'll have it. All right, hang on. Hold and hold. Okay, sorry. There was so much going on with this thing that it was inevitable there was going to be something that I screwed up, and there it was. Well, that and, of course, the Baron Blade thing at the beginning. All right, so we're going to listen to I'm going to do my jean-marc. So let's listen to the Proletariat theme now.
Szalunka dongeremka pełna masz, moto szpikala. Patera vale, vulnea masz, lumpa vesto para. Szalunka dongeremka pełna masz, moto szpikala. Patera vale, vulnea masz, lumpa vesto para.
All right, so that was Proletariat, which marks the last and final villain that we've talked about and listened to this evening. So I want to ask you guys a quick question. Let's imagine for a moment that you were going to be playing a game of vengeance. You know, let's say you're playing against, I don't know, Baron Blade and Fright Train and Ermine and Friction and Proletariat. Let's say in that order specifically. And so, you know, you start your game, you start playing, things are working out all right, but it turns out you're not actually winning. You're kind of losing. So somebody actually asked this earlier in the chat. So you've got 5 new villain themes here. When you lose, which we know it doesn't happen very often, but let's imagine you lose. What are you going to hear? Are you going to hear Baron Blade's theme? Are you going to hear Proletariat's theme? Are you going to hear Fright Train's theme? Well, Jean-Marc came to me and said, I don't know if I like that. I think I've got a better idea. So I think if that were to happen, it actually might sound a little something like this. All right, so as you guys can probably see on screen now, when you lose to Baron Blade, Fright Train, Ermine, Friction, and Proletariat, Baron Blade, being in first position, plays the melody, then Fright Train plays the harmony, Ermine plays the rhythm, and Friction and Proletariat each have extras, which Jean-Marc can explain in a moment. And so real quick, just to answer some of the questions that are streaming by crazily in the chat. Yes, this will work with villains. It was planned out in advance that we would be able to make this work with all 15 of the villains and mix them all together to make... you guys might have noticed actually on Twitter about a week ago, I was asking, how many possible combinations could there be? And it was somewhat prompted by this. How many different pieces of music would Jean-Marc have to make a unique piece of music for each villain team? And it's in the, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions. So, but anyway, before we get into that, Jean-Marc, why don't you tell us a little about what brought on the Proletariat theme, and then we can dive into how we mix them together.
Sure, yeah. So when we were talking with Greater Than Games about Proletariat's theme, obviously sort of traditional working man folk Russian music came to mind, and it's pretty upbeat and stuff, and has a lot of like sort of chorus events. Now in this case, Proletariat is a chorus just in of itself. He can clone himself, and then they can all sing the same thing. And so I thought like actually having like an anthem for all of them to sing together would be really, really cool. So, so that's what I did. And that's me singing in there. And it's not real Russian. We were working hard to get real Russian lyrics in there. And unfortunately, none of us had the skills to do that. And we reached out to people who did, but they couldn't get back to us in time. So maybe in an update, there will be real Russian lyrics, but for now, it just sounds like Russian.
It's faux Russian, as it were. All right, so So that's Proletariat. But as you can see here, we've got melody, harmony, rhythm, and 2 extras based on the different villains. And at this point, we only have 5, so each one can go into one slot. Once we have the villains of the multiverse, we will have 15 total villains that we can mix these together. And Jean-Marc has actually already started coming up with concepts for some of the villains of the multiverse villains and how they're going to fit into this. But basically, he composes 4 pieces, 4 chunks, what he calls stems, that will be used for each of them, and depending on which position they're in, they'll get chunked in to the final piece of music that gets performed if you happen to lose. Right?
Yeah. Right. So, for the, what did you say, blue whale-eared listeners?
Yeah, something like that.
For the blue whale-eared listeners, you'll notice, like, every time a villain theme came up this time, although the style was different, the theme was the same. And it was in the same key, it was in the same tempo, and that was very deliberate because, as Jeremy mentioned, we were kind of separating their roles out. So Baron Blade has a melody part, and a company part, or a harmony part, and a rhythm part. And the rhythm in this case means the bass part and the percussion, and then so does Fright Train, so does Ermine, and you can actually like switch one out for another, and it works. And that was very deliberate. And so yeah, we made it so that now that you have all these stems, the music is dynamically created based on whoever you lost to and order dependent. So as you can see here, whoever was in the first position will have the melody. Whoever's in the second will have the harmony and a company part towards the end. Whoever is in the third will have the rhythm. And then the fourth and fifth will just provide a little bit of extra something to it. We didn't want to mix them all together fully because it just ended up being too much. Because there is too much such thing as too much sound all at once. So it actually
seems like some of the people in the chat are already starting to figure out where we're going with this. So, chat, whose melody would you like to hear first? So let's see here. Melody. The first 2 to get a melody vote will get, we put in the melody, and we're going to do that for harmony and rhythm, and then the other, whoever's left will go into the extras, and then we'll see how it sounds together. Fun times. Audience participation. Yeah, and actually, someone's pointing out that, in the Vengeance rulebook, it does say that Blade should be potentially, they want Proletariat in first position, be first, and that is just a suggestion, not an absolute rule. All right, so let's do harmony. All right, after my comment, this is harmony. The first 2 to get a harmony vote is going to be in harmony. We got Ermine and Ermine. All right, boom. And then we've got rhythm, which is a word that I am never able to spell correctly, even if I have it right in front of me.
You spelled it incorrectly.
Yep. I was like half looking and half typing while also trying to do...
It is a strangely spelled word.
2 Fright Trains. All right, so we'll do Fright Train and Fright Train, which then leaves Friction and Baron Blade as our extras. All right, so we're going to listen to this real quick. We'll give it one time through.
People asking if this is going to be a feature in the game, I would just say to be determined.
All right, so that was Proletariat Melody, Ermine Harmony, Fright Train Rhythm, and Friction Baron Blade as the extras. We'll do maybe, 2 more, and then we'll shut this down and move on to the next portion of the evening, I think. So let's do a melody, and let's see what people come up with. Yeah, so as pointed out, once we have all the villains, there's going to be more than 300,000 possible combinations. It's actually less than that because technically the extras are sort of interchangeable. There's only one extra track. Okay, so it looks like we've got Fright Train, Fright Train, Fright Train. All right, so let's do Fright Train. And let's see, Harmony. But it is still more than would be physically possible for Jean-Marc to actually compose on his own. Friction, Friction, Friction. Okay, good. Friction, and let's do...
A lot of people think of the same thing at the same time here.
Yep. Rhythm. Ermine. So it looks like we're leaving... Oh, yeah, so we got Baron Blade as an extra, and Proletariat as an extra. Okay, so here we got Melody, Fright Train, Harmony, Friction, Rhythm, Ermine, and Proletariat and Baron Blade as extras. So let's listen to that now. Yeah, so people are pointing out that it is somewhat chaotic, and that is for sure. But it all works, which I think is like just a testament to our wonderful Jean-Marc, because he really built this in such a way that, no matter what kind of style or what kind of whatever, it's not ever going to be just broken. It's always going to make sense musically, and I think that is so cool. Like I actually just said, as this played, this particular combination is one I have not yet tried, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Hearing like Friction's like dun, 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 dun. That was really good. So, all right, last one. So let's see, Melody. I'm very excited. I think there's there's more than there's a total of 60 if you count 5 and 5 and 5. It's probably less. That's probably closer to 40 when you count the fact that the 4th and 5th positions are the same. All right, so we got Ermine. I actually didn't do that particular math when I was doing it before. Harmony. Take my money. Yes, indeed. All right, Blade.
Proletariat came in for the Harmony.
All right, Proletariat.
This is our next app, Jeremy. Just this by itself.
All right, Rhythm. Blade. 2 blades. All right, so that means that we've got Friction and Fright Train in the extras. All right, so let's give this combination a listen. All right. So that was Ermine, Proletariat, Baron Blade with Friction and Fright Train as backup, I guess. Backup singers, as it were. Yes. So once Vengeance is in your grubby little hands, you guys will be able to sort of, set up whatever games you want and I guess purposely lose to hear this. I know some people are asking, like, this would make a great app. We'll see. Obviously, we built this as a thing for ourselves. Mainly, it was for testing. We'll consider adding it to the game at a future point. But it is not going to be in the first Vengeance launch, so do not hold us to that for sure.
Yeah, it's just a little thing we built mainly to make sure we could technically do it and it would work on, your phone, for example, playing 5 songs at once. And I made it look a little pretty, but that doesn't mean it's something that can be shippable.
Exactly right. Yeah, there's a long way between something that technically works and is an actual thing that you can put in the hands of people out in the world. So, all right. So that is, I believe that brings to a close our listening party this evening. As I mentioned in the tweets and some other stuff, this was a listening party where you get to see something you've never seen before from us, and that was what I was talking about. A dynamically composed 4 to 5 piece musical something brought to you by our amazing in-house maestro, Jean-Marc.
And if you'd like to, once you get Vengeance in your hands and eventually Villains, if you want to tweet at us some combos that you really like, that'd be cool, because there's way too many, especially with Villains. When Villains comes out, there's way too many for us to listen to them all. So, that's the interesting thing about this, is some of them will sound a lot better than others. And that's fine, because that makes it a little bit more interesting when you don't know what you're going to get. But if you do find ones that it's like, oh, this particular, combination sounds really cool. Tweet that at us and just say what the order is. And, it'd be kind of neat to see what people find out. So.
Yeah, maybe post them as an MP3 or something. So, so Cytosine asks, the order we set them up will produce the variants. That is correct. So the villain in position 1 is the melody, position 2 is the harmony, position 3 is the rhythm, and if you play a 3 villain, that's it. If you play a 4 villain, the 4th villain, gets an extra, and if you play 5, the 4th and 5th villains get an extra. And so, there actually is one more thing we're going to show you tonight before we get to the actual playing, and that is that, a few weeks ago someone asked if we were going to do a story trailer for Vengeance, and unfortunately we just simply did not have the time to do a story trailer for Vengeance. But because we realized that from a marketing perspective we probably needed something, we did put together a bit of a trailer for Vengeance. So the reason why we didn't kick off the listening party tonight with it is because it kind of spoils the thing about the music. And so now that you've heard the music, it's not really a spoiler anymore. So as we get ready to transition into the actual gameplay portion of the evening, let's go ahead and watch the Vengeance trailer, brought to you like 98% by our newest member of the Handelabra team, Krista. So here it is. Check it out, everybody. Vengeance, coming soon.
When evil shows its face, it's only natural to seek out a champion. When the corruption multiplies, our guardians must be sharp to combat it. When we seem to be speeding towards the edge, you might have to roll the dice to save the world. Sometimes, evil is hiding in plain sight, and it takes a hero to lay it bare. When evil seems unstoppable, we turn to our Sentinels. This is our last line of defense. The difference between life and death, between the light and the dark, between freedom and vengeance.
Puns, glorious puns. Yes, thank you, everybody. All right, so we're going to take a quick bio break here because we've been streaming for an hour and a half and we need a break real quick. Probably no more than like 2 or so minutes, and then we're going to be back to play. I'm going to leave the stream running, so we'll see you in about 2 minutes. Thanks, everybody.